job.
You know, at this point, we've essentially had a successful meeting because I've managed to remember to hit record. So it's all smooth sailing from here. So welcome everybody to the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment. Welcome to our February meeting. I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Gayla Harkin. Good morning. Hi, thanks. Yes. Welcome everybody. Welcome Gayla, thank you. This morning we do not have our wonderful fearless leader, Miss Amy Dessenberg-Wines. She is listening in the background, but she's taken a rest, taking it easy today, right, taking care of herself. So we definitely miss her. We love you, Amy, and wishing you well and sending you good thoughts and healing thoughts and love and support. If you would love to drop Amy a comment, a greeting, well wishes, an appropriate joke or comment, drop those in the chat because she will get those, or we'll be sure to pull them so that she gets those. I know she would love that. I think without further ado, we'll just go ahead and get started. I've got our agenda pulled up for us today. We've got a pretty full, jam-packed day. So it should be a good one. We'll record, we'll capture everything in notes. Let me, once Catherine gets started here, I'll be sure to drop the link to the folder that has the materials for today in it. I'll drop that in the chat for you. But it'll have the slide and some additional materials that we'll be touching on today. If you need anything, just holler in the chat or send an email. But I think without further ado, I'm going to introduce and hand it over to Catherine Johnson. She's the new Director for Disability Rights Iowa, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about herself and share and talk to us about DRI's current efforts. So I think with that, Catherine, it's all yours, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you. So first off, a big thank you to Amy, Jessica, and Gayla for this invitation and opportunity to connect with all of you today. And I see Bill Stump, one of our board of directors also. So I want to say hi, Bill. It's always a joy to see you. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here.
Yeah, let me know if that doesn't.
Let me find it. Let's see. Oh, let me go back because I have a video that we'll see. I might have to go back and share on that page, but we'll see if this works. Okay, from beginning. Okay, so again, thank you. It's really exciting to be here with you today. I'm very impressed with your coalition. I've had a chance to meet with Amy, Jessica, and Gayla in the past few months, and I'm excited to be here and learn a little bit more and share kind of what we're doing. I thought I'd start with a little bit about me and my background. So what is on the screen there is a picture of myself. I'm about 8 in this photo, and my 2 baby brothers are with me. So Garrett is the young man with the collared shirt. He's even at that age, he was very professional in his appearance. And then my youngest brother, Scott, is the happy baby there in the photo. So I grew up actually in Iowa City, Iowa. I was born in Washington State, and my family moved to Iowa for an opportunity for my dad when I was about 5.5 years old. He was a professor of mathematics at the University of Iowa, and my mom also worked her career at the University of Iowa in different executive capacities and running different departments. So I was this very fortunate child to grow up in a family that loved public education, and that became very important to me as a youngster and as an adult. My dad also taught me the love of math and analytical reasoning. I remember when I was about this age, 8 or 9, taking a bath, and he was explaining to me fractions and how you multiply fractions. And I just thought it was fun and a kind of an interesting game And I learned later in life that many girls did not like math. And so I never had that opportunity. And I think that that, for me, helped set a stage that law became a kind of a natural extension for me of that analytical reasoning and logic that I so loved as a kid. So I grew up in Iowa City. I went to undergrad at University of Iowa, the bachelor's degree in business and English. And then I graduated on a Friday from undergrad and started law school the following Monday. So I was pretty ambitious. I started law school with this notion that going to law school would help me change the world. And that has been very important to me. It's been an important part of every single job I've had. I really set out with this mission of changing the world for better. I've been always very interested in ensuring the rights of people that have been marginalized by our society are fully realized and that there's full inclusion for people with different identities. And my focus in my earlier career was not on disabilities, but it's always been at the back of my mind, something I was very, very interested in. So I graduated from law school and I started practicing law in Muscatine, Iowa. I worked at Muscatine Legal Aid, both as a staff attorney and as an executive director there. From that job, I went to the University of Iowa, where I had the great pleasure of working for about 6 years, and I ran the Student Legal Services office at the university. It was one of those jobs that I honestly couldn't believe they paid me to do it because it was such fun. And I worked in the student union on campus, and it was a fantastic job. From there, I went into being a public defender in a couple of different capacities, both back in Muscatine and also in Des Moines. I left Iowa 20 years ago to pursue my career. I moved to St. Louis for an assistant dean of students at one of the law schools down there and did that for a number of years. I missed practicing and so moved from St. Louis over to Lawrence, Kansas, to be part of the Kansas Protection and Advocacy System. And I worked for them for 11 years as a disability rights attorney. I did all kinds of very impactful, interesting cases. I also did a lot of policy work. I also did a lot of grant writing and a lot of outreach and presentations and trainings. After 11 years, I moved to the University of Kansas, where I was the director of the ADA Resource Center for Equity and Accessibility for the last 5.5 years before coming back home to Iowa. So at KU, I did a lot of work with employees with disabilities and accommodations, removed campus barriers, a lot of proactive work when it came to disability inclusion, both policy and programming work. And then I moved here in June for this amazing opportunity. And I have to tell you, it's been, I guess, 6-7 months now, and it's just been a fantastic experience, both personally and professionally, to come back home. This has been a dream job of mine for many, many, many years, to be in a position to lead a P&A and to have the ability to make changes across an entire state. So I'm pretty excited to be here with you. So that's a little bit about me. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Disability Rights Iowa. This is my philosophy of the disability rights movement. So you might have heard this kind of a pretty famous phrase, nothing about us without us. That is cornerstone to everything we do at Disability Rights Iowa. And there's a lot of power within the disability rights community. And so I am a big believer in bringing us all together so that we are speaking the same mission statement and that the issues that are important to our community are being shared throughout the community so that we all can be a voice in making the change that needs to happen for our community. So I like to always give people the statistics. So worldwide, there is 1 billion people that identify as having a disability. So that's 1 in 7 individuals worldwide. In the US, there's 61 million people that identify as having a disability. This is based on the last year's, 10 years ago, the census. That's about 26% of the population. My guess is that will go up a little bit when the most recent census is done being counted. So that's a really powerful group of people. You can see that if we would come together, we'd be a huge political force, right? There's also lots of different federal disability laws that have arisen over the years that offer protection against discrimination based on disability and rights that you have as a person with a disability to assert accommodations for different things. So our vision here is that we will become the recognized leader in disability rights advocacy across the state of Iowa and nationally recognized as a force in the disability rights community. So everyone probably already understands this on the meeting today, but I always want to take an opportunity to make sure we're all talking the same language and with the same awareness and understanding. What is a disability? Seems like it would be something people would understand. But since coming to Iowa, I have realized that Iowa as a state only has 11% of our people identify as having a disability. And so we're substantially lower than the national average of 26. And so I think this is both an education issue, and it's also, I think, an Iowa sort of, I am a proud private person, you know, and so I think that that's kind of a combination of that. But disability under federal law is a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. And this is to be very broadly construed. It is not a impairment that limits your ability to do something to the extent that you can't do that activity. It's just any way that that major life activity is done differently than someone in the general population would be considered a substantial limitation under the federal laws. So things that people don't often think of as disabilities are like cancer, diabetes, asthma, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, intellectual disabilities, learning disabilities, traumatic brain injuries, and on and on and on and on. So there is a lot of medical conditions that are considered disabilities under the ADA and under other federal laws. And the reason that's important is you have the ability, if you have one of these medical conditions, to access services from our office with that definition. You also are protected under federal laws. And so I believe it's important that people know that and fully understand their rights. So what is Disability Rights Iowa? We were established in '84 as Iowa's Protection and Advocacy Center. So this center is part of a sister agency across all states and the territories that Congress created in the early '70s because of a situation that was happening at Willowbrook State Institution, and Geraldo Rivera kind of was snuck into this facility and did some recordings kind of undercover, and then shared that on like a 2020 or a Primetime Live or one of those shows. And Congress reacted pretty strongly, saying the conditions at Willowbrook were just horrible. They were torturous. There's all kinds of videotape. If you didn't see the expose back in the '70s when Geraldo shared it, you can Google that and you can see it. But the conditions were awful, just overcrowding, no services for individuals. You know, people were living without clothes, living without food, living in just complete utter squalor. So Congress created the protection and advocacy system to make sure that there were no other Willowbrooks in the future. So as the PNA, we have both the ability to obtain the federal grants that are designated only for PNAs. We also have quasi-police power to go into locked facilities to make sure that the people that are residing there are not abused and neglected like they were in Willowbrook. And so the reason I shared the picture of me at 8 is because that is when Willowbrook happened. And I very clearly remember as a little girl watching Geraldo Rivera's expose, and I remember going up and talking to my mom about how upsetting that was to me, that people were being treated in that way and how unfair and unkind and cruel. And I think I even used the word torture. And my mom and I had this really serious conversation about it. And I remember saying, well, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen when I grow up. And so I think I've been a disability rights advocate since I was 8. I just didn't know it in those terms, but that has been a cornerstone for me of making sure people are not abused and neglected. So our mission is to defend and promote the rights of Iowans with disabilities. We do that in a variety of different ways. We monitor and investigate facilities. We provide free legal assistance to Iowans with disabilities in 12 different disability rights areas of focus. And those areas of focus are on our website. So I'm not going to take the time here to go through them right now, but I'm going to talk about a couple of them that are of particular importance to us in a little bit. We have a 15-member board and a 12-member PAMI advisory council. So what we provide, we work very hard to provide education and empowerment for individuals with disabilities. We are a small but mighty staff, but we are not able to help every single person that calls us. So we have a belief that if we provide education and empowerment and self-advocacy assistance, people have those skills then to go and advocate for themselves. So we do a lot of work on that. We do individual direct legal representation. We do outreach and training, quite a bit of that. And that again is really important. You know, we want to be reaching everyone across the state of Iowa, and that's something we're working to develop the trainings to make sure that they're rotating in different counties outside of Des Moines. We do investigation and monitoring of all different kinds of facilities. We do a lot of systems change advocacy, and we're hoping to expand into doing more of that. We provide technical assistance to other professionals that might need a basic understanding of disability rights laws. And we have two different teams. That one is devoted to benefits planning for people that receive Social Security or Social Security disability. And we have another team that does investigations and monitorings of organizations that serve as a representative payee for somebody who receives Social Security. So some of our current focuses are keeping students with disabilities in school. So we do a lot of special education work. We continue to work to reform the juvenile justice system to make sure that children and youth that are in that system are being treated fairly and not being exposed to abuse and neglect. We do quite a bit of work since COVID and making sure that people with disabilities have equal access to the COVID vaccines, and that both the website, you know, for you to register for that and the actual clinic are proactively accessible. We're involved in the school mask mandate litigation against the governor of Iowa and the director of the education. We do a lot of work with Medicaid and managed care. In particular, we work on promoting and protecting access to long-term services and supports, and improving access for children and youth to behavioral and mental health services. And then, of course, our cornerstone reason for existing is to make sure that residents at facilities are not abused and neglected. So, vision for growth with all of that. We want to be recognized throughout Iowa. I think that we do a good job of being recognized in Des Moines, and we are working on broadening our scope so that everyone in Iowa knows we exist. And then we want to be recognized nationally as a leader. So important is that everyone in Iowa knows that we exist and knows that we're here for them and what services we provide and how to access our services. We are really working to change, well, first off, to identify systems that are failing individuals with disabilities, then working on how we change those and correct and remove those barriers. Protect and advance disability rights. Broaden this understanding of disability. Again, that's a lot of outreach and making sure people understand how broad a disability is under federal law. Again, that's important so people know they have access to us and know that they have rights to be protected against discrimination. I am a huge advocate for partnerships and community engagement. So we're working to grow our community and partnerships with the disability rights community throughout Iowa. We are, this time around this legislative session, slowly dipping our toes into policy work. And so next year we plan on having a policy and a legislative agenda that we will be advancing. We have a brand new website and there's plans that are rapidly changing on that website. There's going to be a video section where there'll be lived experiences from people with disabilities talking about their experiences. There will be videos of all of the events that we do as an agency. There's going to be a blog section. There's going to be a self-advocacy section where there will be FAQs on different areas of law. So kind of an overview of the law and then pointers on how to use that law in different contexts. We have a new section for media. So we've been receiving a lot of media for the different work that we've been doing. We're trying to capture all of that in one place. We're working on, again, a statewide reputation and then working to develop our national profile. We're expanding our resources. We are really wanting to be the starting point for people in Iowa to say, hey, I have a disability rights question, or I have a resource that I need, where do I go? And so our website is being developed to hopefully someday kind of provide that as an initial point of assistance. So the impact of this vision and our growth for everyone is that there will be ongoing virtual and in-person community programming on timely disability rights issues and lived experiences. We will do 2 large celebration events a year. One will be in October. It's to celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month. We did this in October. We had a virtual panel conversation on long COVID and employment with long COVID and your rights as a person with a disability and long COVID and the ADA and how to ask for accommodations. That video will be on our website pretty soon. We are working on adding some ASL to it to make sure that it's fully accessible. So that will live on our website. The other big event we'll do is in May. May is National Mental Health Awareness Month. And so this May, we're having a very large event where we're bringing in a national speaker. The event will be May 10th, and you'll get more information about that soon. We haven't quite started marketing that event, but if you want to mark down the time, you can. The keynote on that day will be 6:30 to 8. It's going to be, if COVID allows us to do this, it's going to be in person in Des Moines, and we're going to have satellite offices throughout the state with our team members there, so people can go to those satellite offices and watch it. And then we're live streaming both to the satellite offices and to all of Iowa. So it will be really cool. It'll be worth attending. We're expanding our resources and providing some best practice guides for how you are move your office, your business, your event from being reactive when it comes to accessibility to being proactive. And so that's just a mind shift that you have to think of, what do I need to do to have my space that I control be accessible, instead of making someone ask for an accommodation to make that space accessible. So we're working on those things. We're having increased social media presence, policy role. Again, this year, we're looking at certain bills that we're concerned about and providing testimony. Next year, we'll have our own legislative agenda. We're concerned about identifying systems that are not serving individuals with disabilities and removing those barriers. And then we want to partner with the entire community within the state of Iowa. So how you can help us is we need you to engage with us. We need to know what you believe the issues are in your community when it comes to disability rights. We want you to share that knowledge and your expertise to make us collectively better on those issues. We would like you to participate in all of our community events. We'd like you to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, so you know what we're doing. And we have a survey that it lives on our website. We'd ask that you complete that and let us know what's important to you. Okay, I think I have time. This we'll see if this works. This is something that a friend of mine did for us, and I take great pride in being able to share this with you. So let's see if this works.
I bet it's totally working, but it's only wanting to like share your PowerPoint screen, if you will.
Oh, okay. I need to go in.
I could tell that link worked because it changed color, but I think it's like behind.
Okay, let me, so new share. Okay.
Yeah, maybe like stop share and then come back, like find that screen.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and so
Beautiful.
we'll see if it might not have the sound. Let's see.
Hello, Iowans. Sorry I'm not with you. My name is Judy Heumann, and thank you so much for asking me to share some of my thoughts about the importance of taking the vaccine to prevent COVID. I had polio in 1949, before the vaccine was available. I am a disability rights advocate, meaning I believe that having a disability does not have to limit our lives at all. But I think it is important to say that had the vaccine for polio been available when I was young, I would have received that vaccine, as did all of my family, as do millions of people around the United States and around the world. I have received my 2 COVID shots, and I will be receiving the booster in October, 8 months after I had my 2nd shot. I really encourage all of you and your friends and neighbors to seriously look at the adverse effect that is happening to countries or every state. I seriously encourage all of you to take the vaccine if you haven't. And if you have, to please speak to family and friends who may have questions about the importance of taking this vaccine. We know that at least 10 million people in the United States are currently being identified as having something called long COVID. Like with polio, it took many years to look at the long-term impact that the virus would have on the millions of people in the United States who in fact had contracted polio prior to vaccinations being available. We want to make sure that our community is safe. We want to make sure that our children are not at higher risk. And while right now many younger children are not yet eligible to receive the vaccine, it is our responsibility as adults to help ensure that they are not exposed. So get the vaccine, please wear your mask. Recognize that it is our responsibility at the most local level to help protect the lives of people we love and value. Thank you very much.
Okay, I might have to go back. Let's see. Okay. Did that work? Oh, there. Okay.
It did.
Okay. Okay. So that is it. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here this morning. I'm happy to take questions if people have them, or I don't want to kind of delay your schedule. So you tell me. Like.
We've got some additional time. That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing about yourself and that incredible video and the vision that you have for Disability Rights Iowa. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah,
I see in the chat. Oh, hey, Gay, go for it. Yes.
Yeah, Catherine, are you able to share this PowerPoint with us so that we can attach it to the notes and people will be able to look at it after if they wish?
Yes, I will. I just need to give me a couple of days because I'll have to add some alt text to my photo, which is not on there right now. So I'll make it accessible and send it on.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. That's perfect. And just lots of comments in the chat about thank you and welcome and how excited we all are for your new efforts and your vision. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I look forward to working with all of you. Nothing changes with one person. You know, this is a community and we need to rally together to continue to force some change in Iowa. So I look forward to the partnerships and what we can do together.
I have a question.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry, caller. Yes, hello, welcome. Share your question.
Denise Conrad here. Is alcoholism considered a disability under our federal law?
It can be, yes. Yes, alcoholism can be, but if somebody has an addiction to an illegal drug, that would be prohibited under the ADA from being considered a disability, but alcoholism is included.
Okay. Somebody had told me it was, but I wasn't quite sure. That's why I'm asking. But thank you very much.
Sure, a great question.
So this is Leanne. I just have a quick question about, is there some criteria or guidelines that the public could refer to if they're considering reaching out to DRI for legal assistance on a matter, and perhaps what that threshold might be for DRI to consider a case for acceptance?
You know, probably the best thing to do is there are certain areas of law and legal issues that we are not able to provide assistance on, and that's on our website under who or kind of what we do, like general inquiries. So if it is not something that we specifically say that we cannot under our federal grants provide help, then the best thing to do is to call us and go through the intake process, and then we would verify through that process if the individual meets our eligibility criteria under our grant. And it's likely, you know, that the person would. And then secondly, whether or not the issue that they're needing help with fits into one of those 12 areas of priorities that we do.
And there was actually a question, Catherine, kind of related to the priorities. Is employment discrimination and accommodation still a priority focus? I didn't see it listed. And this is coming from Roxanne Coggle with the Epilepsy Foundation. And she says, you know, we send a lot of referrals to DRI kind of related to that topic. So
definitely a very big priority for us. And it's one that actually we're hoping to expand more. So I would say, please send people our way that have those kinds of concerns. There are very specific, you know, requirements under Title I of the ADA when it comes to employment. And we want to make sure that, you know, we have a chance to help everyone that's having difficulty either obtaining an accommodation that's appropriate for them to continue working, or if they're having some kind of adverse consequences because of a disability at work. You know, both of those are issues of concern to us.
thank you.
Sure. And I'm sorry, for some reason, I guess I don't have the chat pulled up. Let me pull up. Oh, okay.
Oh, no worries. It's all good. Sometimes that's awkward when you're sharing at the same time. So
Yeah, I can stop sharing. Maybe that.
all
Let me do
good.
that there.
I think I captured everything. Okay. Any additional questions, comments? Awesome. Hey, Bill. Fire away.
I just have to say, as a board member, DRI, Catherine has really hit the ground running, and truly means everything she just said to you. You know, the community outreach, she's come over to Dubuque already and did a vaccination clinic and also did some education on special ed to folks. So I'm real excited. So I just have to give kudos a little bit. So and encourage folks to look at that website. It is amazing. It is really a huge improvement and very user friendly. The accessibility features are amazing. So I'd encourage people to look at that. Thanks, Catherine.
I was gonna
Thank
say,
you,
we'll
Bill.
be sure to share that out too with the
Yeah.
notes. Yeah.
Well, we'll send the website. And I really want to give a huge thank you to our communications coordinator. Her name is Caitlin Schultz. She started early to mid-September, kind of right before we came to Dubuque, Bill, to do that first clinic up there. She has done remarkable work with our website. And so if you want to email her, this looks great. She would love to have that kind of feedback. It's phenomenal, and it's going to just get better and better as she spends more time with it.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'll go check it out. That's really cool. That's hard work, right? Websites are hard work. Oh my goodness. So
Sure.
that's That's incredible. And yeah, we will be sure to tell her how amazing it is.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I can relate. Love hearing that kind of stuff. Again, thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Bill. You know what, let's just dive right into our policy updates with our favorite policy gurus. Brooke Lovelace is going to start with state policy updates and kind of what's going on, and then we'll pass it over to the lovely Julie Christensen. Brooke, it's all you. Hey, Julie. Oh, you're muted. Detail Schmeek.
Hello.
Hello.
Had all these other buttons I was trying to push. Good morning. Guess I need more caffeine. I've already had some too. So it has been a busy week at the Capitol. It's actually our offices, the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council is actually located downtown. We're 2 blocks south of Wells Fargo Arena. And it is state wrestling tournament time. And so it is a little crazy down here. So if you hear a bunch of people walking by screaming, everything's okay. They're just excited because it's wrestling time here in Iowa. Just wanted to go over, as we said, it's a busy week in the Capitol. It actually, this Friday, tomorrow, is the first funnel week. And so what that means is that bills need to be voted out either of a House or a Senate committee. If they are not voted out by one of the Senate committees, then they're considered what they call dead. There are some exceptions to that. Bills on taxes or bills that spend money can still be debated and approved and passed through. And there's also a weird exception where the leaders in the Senate or the House can also somehow push bills through and tie bills to other bills. But for the most part, if they don't get through one committee, they are considered dead. Just for your information, the second funnel is March 18th. And then what that means is the bill needs to be voted out of one chamber and then a committee in the other chamber. So for example, it needs to be voted out like fully of the House, and then it would need to be voted out of the Human Resources in the Senate committee meeting to be able to be still alive. The last day of session this year is April 19th. So it's a little early, and we really do think that they're going to finish up by then because it is an election year, and so they'll want to be done because there's a lot of work to do on that too, because you guys, I'm sure, may have heard that the state was redistricted, and so there's some folks that will be in different districts and will need to get out and start their campaigns. Also, I'm sure folks have heard that the tax bill, the priority of this year, I'm sure, as everybody's been talking about, has been taxes and tax relief. That was in the governor's agenda and the legislators' agenda as well too. And the tax bill did pass last night, and that's what their plan is, a 4% flat tax bill. That's House File 2317. If you do want to read the details about that. It also has an inclusion for all retirement income. The opponents for this say that they can recover this tax having this tax cut through all the surplus that Iowa has had for the last few years, and that's actually Iowa's money that should go back to the taxpayers. But there's also some concerns, though, that down the road that this could lead to, if there's not that surplus, this could lead to cuts in education and to Medicaid and to some of the services and supports that our folks with disabilities rely on. Kansas did something similar to this with a flat tax rate across all income a few years ago, and from what I can tell, it was a disaster. They did have to cut services. And then there's also, of course, people that are against it that say it does favor the wealthy and not the middle class and not lower class when you do have a flat tax across the board. So now it goes to the Senate. They have a little bit of a different plan. Their flat tax rate is actually at 3.7, and that they also want to raise sales tax to 7% across the state. There currently are some local communities that already have that 7%, but it's not across the state. They also, the governor and the Senate want a corporate tax cut that is not currently in the House bill that passed last night. So there are some differences that will need to be worked out on that. There were some educational bills that did actually, these passed last week. There was one that was from last year, and this was Senate File 168. And this actually requires area education agencies to provide special education services to students in private schools. And this was really supported by parents who have wanted their children to go to private schools with their siblings, but they were unable to get access to special education services in those schools. And so this was something that was requested by parents, and this is safe from the funnel. It did come out of committee last week. And then there's also another bill that's of interest. It's Senate File 2197. And this creates a special education task force that will meet over the summer to basically make recommendations about how to better service private school students needing special education services. And then it establishes an advisory committee to make those recommendations. And it does require that there be parents on that advisory committee. And so two of those bills, a lot of folks believe are positive educational bills that help folks with disabilities. We do have two that we're following that we're really on the fence about. House File 2068, and then there's Senate File 2093. And what this does is it allows landlords to deny accommodations for service animals that may cause harm, and deny that request because it may cause harm to others or cause damage to property. The bills also require proof of disability and the need for a service animal every 6 months. These are actually the Senate. They both actually passed the committee, so they're safe from funnel. But Senator Dawson, who is running the Senate bill 2093, is interested in making some amendments to it. There's some weird language in there that says the landlord could deny any accommodation if the landlord themselves believes that it's just too expensive to make that accommodation. And so the council, of course, is concerned about that. So we're continuing to monitor that, and we're working with Senator Dawson to see if we can make some amendments to that. So that's one to follow. There are two that address hearing aids for people under the age of 18. Senate File 2121, and then there's a House File 2188. The House File actually has a committee meeting today at 1 if people would like to listen in onto that. But basically, this allows health coverage for hearing aids for people under the age of 18. And they did both pass their subcommittees, but as I said, we're waiting for the committee meeting today. There's some folks that believe because there's some insurance coverage doesn't cover hearing aids for people over the age of 18. And so some feel that this is somewhat discriminatory by saying it's for people 18 and under. But listening to some of the subcommittee meetings, there was family members that explained how, not being able to hear when you're trying to learn how to read and do math can have other developmental delays growing up in life, which is a little bit different than when you're an older Iowan that maybe has hearing loss at an later age. And so I guess the debate was, this is a place to start before we look at allowing health coverage for this for all folks. And so that's something we continue to follow. There's one that just actually passed this morning out of the Human Resources Committee, and that's Senate File 2116. And this adds 12 beds to the state mental health institutes for both children and adults in the state of Iowa. So this is safe from funnel. The council registered undecided on this. We know that there's definitely a need for these beds. In Iowa, we still have a lot of folks that are served in these institutions out of state, and a lot of children. And there's a lot of folks that are still stuck in hospitals, emergency rooms, and in jails, and that are not getting the mental health services they need. But as you guys know, the council also wishes that we would be also putting some resources into community services as well, and that these beds are time limited, and that there's resources in place for them once they do get out of these institutions. And that was some of the discussion this morning that they had on this bill as well too. But as I said, that did pass. And along with that, there was another bill after that that established a tiered rate for these inpatient intensive services that folks might need as kind of a step down payment method to make sure that folks are getting these services. And I don't know, Jessica, how am I doing on time? I know Julie's time is limited.
No, you're doing all right.
Okay.
Yep, you're good. You got some more time. Totally.
Well, this is just one of our favorites. Is there's some more voting bills again. It seems like every year we're making changes to how our Iowans can vote. And there's two bills in both the House and the Senate. They're study bills. These are both safe from funnel, though they did pass. But it does something with elections on who, when you're running for a county or state commission, on where you can receive funding to run for that. And then also alongside with that, they're tying some absentee ballot language into them. And both these bills really do read like stereo instructions. They're hard to follow. But the bottom line is, it seems like it appears that they make more work to the county staff and the state staff that work on these absentee ballots. And then also, it looks like it makes it more confusing to people who actually do want to vote through absentee ballots. And the numbers on this, in case you'd like to follow it, is House Study Bill 719 and Senate Study Bill 3143, although they will give those actual bills now that they have passed. Kaufman is in charge of the Senate bill. But this is just something that the council, as we try to help our self-advocates know their rights for voting, it just makes it a little bit more difficult to get that information out to them on what instructions and policies and they need to follow. And so we'll be working with the Secretary of State's office again, if these do pass, to see what their suggestions are to continue to make sure that we get the correct information out when people want to exercise their right to be able to vote through an absentee ballot process. There were two bills that one's study bill that passed the House Resource Committee meeting this morning that relates to newborn screening. And Iowa apparently is behind the times on following federal guidelines when the federal guidelines come out about what to look for newborn screenings and how early to do that and what to detect and what some of the rules are. And so basically this is just making some requirements that Iowa is a little bit more quick at following these federal guidelines to help update when we do these screenings and to make them more efficient. And then it provides a little bit more teeth to the administrative rules that are out about those bills. And that, I don't know if I said that, but that was Senate Study Bill 3122, and it did pass this morning. So that is also safe. There's a couple of stuff out there about MHDS funding that makes it so that counties, it increases the percentage that they need to have in their reserves before they are disqualified from receiving the incentive fund. That did pass. There is also a Senate study bill that we were following up that allows schools and long-term care providers to give medical cannabis to children who have a state-issued card for medicine. This is for folks that's helpful for kids and folks in facilities to help prevent seizures. This, I'm not sure, has reached the Judiciary Committee yet. The subcommittee passed it, but I haven't seen it on the calendar for the Judiciary Committee yet. And it's Senator Zahn that you should contact about if this is something that is of interest to you. And then I saw that Roxanne's on. There's also a House File Bill 795 about epilepsy training, and that's from last year. And I'm not seeing that that's had any movement. And Roxanne may know more information about that, because I know that's something that they support. It requires training in the school districts. And I don't know, Roxanne, if you wanted to comment on that one.
Yeah, actually, that House bill from last year that passed on a 99-1 vote in the Iowa House is still alive this session. But in Senate Study Bill 3104, that seizure safe school language got added to Senate Study Bill 3104 on a education omnibus bill, on an education bond bill, on another bill. And that actually is being run in committee here in about 10 minutes through the Senate Education Committee.
Great, great.
And with amendments, but we don't know if they took our proposed amendments or not.
That's just what we've been tracking, a little bit about what we've been tracking, what's going on at the Capitol. I do just want to make a plug in for our Infonet resources. We did change things up a little bit this year. We are doing weekly emails to everybody that's subscribed to us to let them know what happened the previous week at the Capitol. Along with that, we're doing what we call our Capitol Snapshot, which is just a quick video that our public policy manager does, just to, if people like to rather hear their information, just kind of another format to give an update about what happened the previous week. And then we are also continuing to do our monthly Capitol chats. That's just a virtual meeting that we have with advocates that want to get a little bit in-depth look about what had passed, what's not passing, and have questions if they don't really follow what a bill is, like these voting ones that we're still just puzzled about. I'm sure people might have questions about that. And the next one for that would be February 25th. And you can find out, that's on our Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council website if you want to register for that. And hopefully everybody's getting the emails for that. And then also we do have our bill tracker. So all these bills that we talked about, if you wanted to find out where they are or find out a little bit more information about them than what I gave to you today, you could just go to our bill tracker on our Infonet website. And I can put these links in the chat too. I think that's all I had, Jessica.
Thank you, Brooke. Any questions, comments? And thanks for hopping in too, Roxanne. Appreciate that.
I do have a quick question.
Hey, Joel. Yes, fire away.
So I was hoping Brooke would at least mention this. We do have the SNAP benefit change that's going to occur at the end of March. That is happening. Where the emergency proclamation, the governor declared that it's over. Benefits for SNAPs are going to drop back to the normal levels that they are starting in April. So the minimum additional that was $95, well, there will be many people in the disability community that will be affected by this. And food pantries and everything else are going to get stocked and ready for an influx. Also, I also wanted to comment on Senate Bill 2093. I put in the chat that from what I heard, the only way you can get like approval for a service animal here in the state of Iowa appears to be through a forensic psychiatrist. And there's only 3 of them in the state. So that is very problematic right there.
Joel, it's interesting that you said that because I listened into some of the reasoning behind those bills yesterday, and the concern that a senator, I think Eller, that brought up was that they're hearing that that people are just going out of state, like just getting something in the mail from California that says that they need a service animal, and when they really don't. So apparently there's some misinformation out there that possibly landlords are saying that people are just going out and getting these really quick, easy certificates. They need an animal from some, other state thing that's not noticed in Iowa. So it's interesting that you say that, because that was different comments than what we heard yesterday in the committee meeting.
Yeah, as I was thinking after I read the bill does lack a lot of common sense to it. If misinformation is the reason for this bill's creation, well, that's another problem right there. And it's not even addressing the real problem. If you only have 3 people in the state of Iowa to go to get this approval, but also the bill's language stating you have to have like a basic, like not right away, but it's like you have to know this person for a period of time. Like, so it's pretty problematic. I think more of a focus should be on how about we find a way to find more individuals that can be licensed and can allow people with disabilities to have these service animals. Instead of like, oh, let's make a bill to, well, hurt the disability community in the long run by housing providers a little more power.
Thank you, Joel. Lisa brought up in the chat too that the, FHA and Section 504, the Rehab Act, right, allows for this and as a reasonable accommodation. Brooke, did you say who do we reach out to on this? This wasn't.
Senator Dawson is the one that said that he's looking to make amendments on it. And I'm not top of my head. I don't know what district he's in, but I can look it up real quick. And Joel, thanks for bringing up the bills about SNAP. There are a lot of bills out there that want to still do some type of verification and determination on whether people get their Medicaid and get their food stamps, and making it harder to folks to qualify for those, and to have there's like a welfare check health file 2438 that has a lot of requirements in there on things that DHS must do to check, monthly cross checks, a bunch of stuff on that. And we are following those too. There's, I think people comment in these meetings, there's not a lot of evidence in Iowa that there's a lot of fraud with that Medicaid or with SNAP. And so it does seem like it's a waste of taxpayer money to put more requirements on what DHS is already doing. But there's a lot of bills about that.
I do have the link for DHS where they talk about the SNAP benefits returning to normal. They do provide like a few ideas on what you can do, like the double food bucks, of course, food banks, and even SNAP education and training programs as well are available. But still, I feel like it's, in my personal opinion, I think it's too soon for these benefits to go away, at least. Sooner or later, we'll probably hear another variant of COVID that'll be out and about at some point.
Bill, did you have something you wanted to say?
Okay, there I am. One of the things that's very passionate to me is guardianship and conservatorship. And I think, it doesn't get a lot of press, but in 2019, the guardianship conservatorship laws were changed. Number one, to change the wording from ward to protected person, which was just a great thing, I think, just terminology wise, but it requires folks to write a care plan for guardianship conservatorship. And it was a difficult transition. I won't lie, for myself, it was too. I mean, it's much more detailed information that you need to provide, but I've really wrapped my head around that information is needed. Prior, you just had to say, okay, I fed, clothed, did this the last 3 years. So what has taken place is there's a Senate bill that I would support. They made some logistical changes to it, but it's in the House where it's very concerning. Basically, the probate lawyers are involved in what they would like to do is basically take everything back to the pre-reform measures, which would be a disaster, and set up all kinds of opportunities for people to abuse guardians or to abuse protected persons, and do very little reporting. The thing is that the transition has already happened. Everybody has done their initial care plan, and now it's a matter of doing the annual review. I just did our annual review. It took me about 2 hours. It's not difficult. The misinformation that's getting out there is that you have to have an attorney to do this. You do not. I have never hired an attorney. I am not an attorney, and it's doable, but to go back would just further confuse everybody. So I'm encouraging folks to contact people on the House Judiciary Committee, chaired by Representative Holt, Representative Height, who is an attorney, is one of the folks that kind of pushes some of this. So, and I just encourage people, because it's just setting up for a big disaster if we go back, and it makes no sense to do that at this point. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a bill number on that, Bill? Bill number, Bill?
I was just kind of looking. I can send it to you because it's in a zillion notes. We've been meeting. I serve on the Iowa Guardianship Conservatorship Association with Professor Josie Gittler at the University of Iowa, who basically wrote the legislation. And we've been meeting with, we've met, I think, with just about everybody on the Judiciary Committee. But I'll send that to you, Brooke. I'll dig for it and find it. It's the one that's supported, but it doesn't get a lot of attention, but it's concerning that they would go back. So
yeah,
I'll get that to you.
Yeah, we'll definitely start tracking that if we haven't already.
Right. Yeah. Will you CC us on that too, Bill? And we'll be sure to, be sure to share all that.
Thanks for letting me plug that. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. No, thanks for reminding us and keeping it on our radar. It's really important. Miss Julie, would you, hi, welcome. Thanks for joining your favorite Iowans.
I was giggling when Brooke said the first funnel, because it reminded me of the first time I heard that term my first year in Iowa, and I was like, funnel, what, tornado, what are we talking about?
Not a derecho. Yeah.
Thanks for that laugh. That was fun reminiscing. So, hi everyone. I think I'm supposed to give you an update on federal policy, which is not nearly as exciting as apparently what's going on in the state of Iowa. But let me, I am in need of a visual aid to keep myself organized. So let me just give a quick update on some things that are going on within the context of APSI's policy priorities for the current year. So we are actively working on phasing out of 14C and sub-minimum wage across the country, building the capacity of the DSP, direct support professional workforce, to meet current and evolving needs with specific intent on making sure that employment service professionals are included in efforts to support the broader DSP workforce, including funding that is coming through states, making sure that that also gets to employment. Achieving full intent of our current federal employment first policies, and also promoting ABLE expansion and Social Security SSI, SSDI reform. So that's kind of the lay of the land. If there are some other things going on that if folks have questions about, I may or may not be able to answer, but I at least know who can answer and can get you those answers. But I'll give just a quick update on kind of what is going on, which is not a lot. So I think where we last left off was we were hoping and anticipating that the social infrastructure package, otherwise known as Build Back Better, was going to pass through the Senate. That fell apart right before the holidays. So right before Christmas, the negotiations broke down. In January, there were a couple of attempts to kind of re-establish negotiations, and where things have landed at this point is that the package formerly known as Build Back Better is very unlikely to proceed. At first, it was a focus on what can we trim out and have a smaller package, but at this point, it is looking like things are pivoting to pulling out pieces and parts of Build Back Better that have a likelihood of moving forward and potentially getting them attached to a broader omnibus bill that is being negotiated right now, which kind of brings us to what Congress is mostly focusing on, which is all things budget and getting the budget passed. So it's kind of good news, bad news, because there are a number of pieces in Build Back Better that it looks like will be able to be attached to the omnibus, including potentially the investment in home and community-based services broadly. So that is good news. Uncertain the future of the 14C provision that was in Build Back Better. But I'm going to talk about what we're doing on that in a second. The other piece that really took up kind of all the oxygen over the last 6 weeks, well, since New Year's, I guess, was trying to get some voting rights legislation passed. Increasingly, from an APSI perspective, we are trying to highlight and get focus on the voting rights work that is being done, because the reality is that we are now finding ourselves, this is not a political statement, y'all know me, I'm a happy independent and critique of all sides. So not meant to be a political statement, but our current reality is that much of the work that we've been trying to do on the disability policy front is stalled because of partisan roadblocks, and now a shift to states starting to take on, how can I say this? A shift towards states introducing their own legislation intended to circumvent federal legislation, which theoretically should not be possible, but is unlikely to withstand a challenge because of the current makeup of the court. So voting rights legislation is now increasingly important for the disability community, because that is the place that we have a voice in making sure that we have representation in Congress and throughout the administration who are going to pay attention to these issues. I think that's the bigger concern. So that was a very roundabout way of kind of giving you a not great update on what is going on. So all things right now are omnibus negotiations. It does look like voting rights has stalled, but they're going to keep working on that. And I would not expect to hear much more about Build Back Better at this point. Even the term Build Back Better is so politically charged in DC right now that people are talking about individual provisions. So what does that mean? Here's the good news. Committees are starting to dig into some things again, including workforce development, WIOA, people with disabilities in the workforce. And so hopefully y'all were able to check out your colleague and friend, Brian Dennis, who testified to the Senate Health Committee on at their hearing about lessons learned from COVID. Brian did a phenomenal job of speaking about kind of the intersectionality piece, the reason why these are systemic problems that include the workforce system. And just a really powerful testimony on his part. The hearing itself was the originating reason for the hearing was that Microsoft is taking an increasing role in the disability policy space, specifically around assistive technology. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to the hearing, you can still see it. But there was quite a huge focus on assistive technology, and that really was the primary topic of the conversation. And I thought Brian did a masterful job of weaving in the yes, and there are these other pieces that we need to talk about. So, so thank you, Iowa, for continuing to be a leader and have a voice on the national stage and pushing these issues. Very, very grateful for that. Did want to note that one of the things that did come out of the hearing, which is interesting, is that Senator Kaine brought up the Social Security cliff. And that was kind of an unanticipated question just given the topic of conversation, but I wanted to highlight that because there are a couple of things that are floating through that were part of Build Back Better, but related to Social Security reform that have the attention of Capitol Hill and are moving forward. Not broad strokes Social Security reform that we know we need, but some individual pieces that I think could be really helpful. So that was exciting. There was also a Senate help hearing this week that was a follow-up to the one that Brian testified at, that was more focused on workforce broadly. It was the testimony largely focused on returning from incarceration, but Senator Casey, during his question and answer, very specific, shifted the conversation to say we also have to be talking about people with disabilities, and made a plug for 14C elimination as well. So I think those are the big things. The other thing that I wanted to highlight that is getting a lot of attention is Ability One is in the process of releasing a new strategic plan. And just to kind of give a step back for folks who may not understand, Ability One and their space in this. So Ability One so the Javits-Wagner-O'Day Act is kind of the umbrella legislation under which the Ability One program sits. And there are millions of dollars allotted for employment for people with disabilities that fall under the Ability One program. Historically, Ability One has been criticized for being largely institutionally based, segregated programs, use of subminimum wage. And so the current commission for Ability One has sorry, I almost said Obama, goodness. In the Biden administration, there were a couple of really key appointees to the commission who are longtime allies and disability employment rights advocates. And it could not have come at a better time. So this is exciting to look at because there really is an attempt to change the Ability One program, to modernize it in a way that aligns with competitive integrated employment. There are a lot of Ability One providers who have already done this work voluntarily. Ability One is moving away from 14C certificates as well, which is a major coup for the national initiative to phase out 14C certificates. But I think the key piece is that this strategic plan is really focusing on making sure that competitive integrated employment is achievable through legislation and regulatory oversight of the Ability One program, which also means the need to change JWAD, which no one has wanted to touch because it's a big behemoth. And so it's actually very exciting that the Ability One Commission is committed to putting forward a draft of proposed revisions to JWAD by the end of the calendar year for consideration. So lots of movement, I think, in positive ways. We'll see where this lands. I am very sensitive to the kind of been there, done that critique of, starts and stops on Ability One reform. But this really is a very different time and some real opportunity to align, because the reality is that Ability One programs can be competitive integrated employment. We've seen that work, and there are a lot of jobs on the line if Ability One as a program were to cease to exist tomorrow. The concern being that those dollars would not likely get absorbed to support employment for people with disabilities. So that was a really bad explanation of that. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. So I'm actually going to switch gears to, we have a number of pieces of legislation that, I just saw your comment, Brooke. Yeah, we'll get back to that in a second. Your neighbors in Missouri are really pushing the envelope here. So I'm actually going to switch screens here because I want to pull up the ICIE website if I can figure out how to do that. Wah, wah, wah. Here we go. Okay. So every time I did an update, I used to update all of my slides for every single bill, and I was like, that's not a good use of time. So now it all lives on the website. So I want to show you how to get to it. So if you go on our website to policy and advocacy, and then go to our legislative priorities page, which is, I think, where I'm at. I gotta move things so I can scroll. Here you will find the current legislation that ICIE is actively working on. There are links directly to the bills. And if we have put out a letter of support or done one in coalition with, those are listed here as well. So that is another advocacy tool for folks. If you want to copy and paste language to do your own outreach, you are welcome, welcome, welcome to do that. So we keep this updated. Generally speaking, the things that we are working the most on are the Transformation to Competitive Integrated Employment Act, which is the phase out of 14C. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. The National Apprenticeship Act, and there's a couple of other related bills attached to that, are also getting quite a bit of momentum, and Department of Labor leadership has been very committed to inclusive language in all things legislation around apprenticeships to be inclusive of people with disabilities. So we're continuing to work on that. And then the other piece is the SSI Restoration Act, which was included in Build Back Better, but we're hopeful is going to end up in the omnibus. And let me just pull up my slide to remind myself of the bullet points of that, because I'm not smart enough to remember these details. So this particular piece of legislation would raise SSI's sub-poverty level, so the monthly benefits to be 100% of the poverty level. That would be, I believe it's a 31% increase, but don't quote me on that number. It would update it would eliminate the marriage penalty, so that, you know, if people with disabilities are married, they each are still eligible for their full individual benefits through Social Security, as opposed to a lower combined rate, which is what's currently happening. Changes to some of the SSI income rules, and then also eliminating some of the benefit reductions. So this will make sense to those of you who are in the weeds of Social Security. There's a lot of little deductions here and there that come out of the bottom line of what people with disabilities get in their Social Security checks. It would eliminate those, all resulting in more cash in hand to people with disabilities, which is what the program is intended to do. So those are the primary bills that we are working on at the moment. I also wanted to note that we have a state legislation page now that you can go on. I did not change the date. This actually was updated more recently than June 24th. So that is my bad. But here you can find all of the state legislation that we're working on, including, so we have the 14C legislation up front, primarily because there are many folks on Capitol Hill who have this page bookmarked related to the transformation bill and are really wanting to see what is happening around the country. So there are, I forget now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 states with 14C legislation introduced. And I will put all of these links in the chat too when I'm done talking, so you can get to all of them and send the slides to Jess as well. And then also New Hampshire and Washington, who have phased out their 14C subminimum wages already, have legislation that are kind of upping the ante. And I want to specifically plug in the state of Washington that they are taking on sub-prevailing wages. So 14C, just to be super clear, is an exemption from the federal minimum wage. So anything related to phasing out of 14C has no bearing on settings. It is not shutting down what we commonly refer to as the sheltered workshop system, because 14C only says that everybody has to be paid minimum wage. Minimum wage, however, is not prevailing wage. So Washington State eliminated the sub-minimum wage last year. They most likely will get this sub-prevailing wage passed. It is moving very quickly, but that's kind of like the next level. And I just want to highlight that because there are states that are just trying to wrap their brain around how can we deal with sub-minimum wage, much less making sure that people with disabilities get paid what everybody else gets paid, even if we check the box because they're making the minimum wage, if that makes sense. So this is like wage equity 2.0 that Washington is really taking the leadership on. So I wanted to point that out. So all of that is on the website for you to take a look at. Other things that are available to you on the website before I jump back to my last parting comment so you can get on with your agenda and stop listening to me because I'm not really all that exciting. We have updated competitive integrated employment snapshots for you so you can see what's going on in terms of 14C, in terms of Medicaid funding and employment rates. So Iowa always outperforms the national average when it comes to employment for people with disabilities. Yay, Iowa. There's still a gap as evidenced by your state snapshot, which provides the employment rates, but also what is the employment gap and what is the poverty gap, which are still significant in Iowa. So those are just resources for you that you can feel free to use. The other one, they're available on the website. The other one is the 14C utilization and trends for your state. So you can see kind of what 14C utilization in the state has looked like over the last couple of years. It is a significant decline that matches what's happening across the country. Not a surprise that there was a significant drop between 2019 and 2020 that matches across the country, particularly in light of the COVID pandemic. The 2021 data is interesting on a state-by-state basis in seeing where states have either held to lesser utilization or just ramped right back up. Iowa is in the status of kind of holding where things were, which is good news, but also still work left to do.
And I was going to say the number of certificates that Iowa has is actually higher than that. So I just want to warn people, if you're polling information from the DOL site as to who in Iowa is holding a 14C certificate, that's typically inaccurate. So if you want to know kind of who that is, I would encourage you to reach out to us at ICIE. And we partner with VR, collaborate closely with like VR and Medicaid to kind of track that and stay in communication with providers around that. So not to call out that number, Jules, but I just wanted to share with folks that, you know, sometimes if you go to that site and you pull that, it's not entirely accurate for whatever reason. So
yeah, it's an excellent point. And so let me explain what these resources are doing to help combat that. So one is when you look at the orange, orange is what's considered a pending certificate. Pending certificates do not need to be reported to Department of Labor. So the only hard numbers we have are the active certificates. So one of the things we are tracking is the number of pending certificates, because the reality is that there are very few new certificates being issued across the country. So when we look at pending certificates, these are certificate settings that already are in existence and are continuing to serve people with disabilities. And so it's important to track that in terms of, you know, that's an uncounted population, to Jess's point. if you look at the competitive or the CIE sheet, we actually use a different set of stats. So this includes your active and pending certificates, which as of the October, the most recent was 12. So that's that difference that Jess was just talking about. You have 8 active certificates. Apparently you have 4 pending because 8 plus 4 equals 12. And it's different for each state. Where we arrive at an estimated number of individuals, and I can send you guys the data for your state that gets to this, is that APSI actually calculates on a state-by-state level the average number of individuals served in a 14C certificate setting, so that on a state-by-state level, we can extrapolate and guesstimate how many people we believe are being served in a pending certificate. And that's where you come to that 453 number, which is very different than the 302. Does that make sense?
And I'm not remembering, Julie. Sometimes they list pending certificates on that list. But
yes, but without the number of people served.
People served, okay. Right, okay.
Yeah, I'm reaching out to the 14C certificate holders in Iowa to update the numbers that they're working with and what they're reporting. And it'll be interesting because of what I have done so far. I've visited with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 agencies so far. The numbers are very much lower than what it looks like represented there. Is that because the state, like Glenwood, our state resource center, is included in that, and they have a larger representation in this group? I
don't know off the top of my head if Glenwood has a 14C certificate. To be honest, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me.
Yeah, they do. I've got it in front of me.
I don't know how that works.
Oh, it's Woodward. It's Woodward that has that. And I understand that 14C is also active in Glenwood.
And so what none of this data is going to tell you is anything around state use contracts. And that's another piece. So within your state, when you are talking about the utilization of subminimum wage in your state, you are probably aware of larger numbers than what is reported to Department of Labor, because the only thing that Department of Labor is going to report is the 14C certificates that are federally provided through the Federal Department of Labor. So that's another distinction to keep in mind. And every state handles that differently in terms of how those numbers are reported. From a federal legislation perspective and the Transformation to Competitive Integrated Employment Act, that bill only addresses the U.S. Department of Labor issuance of 14C certificates. It would have no impact on anything that a state is doing on their own. Which kind of brings us full circle to Brooke's comment, because one of the things I wanted to note is that we are paying very close attention to what is happening in Missouri. If I can open my screen here. So Missouri passed legislation in July that allows subminimum wage to be a legal practice within the state of Missouri. Lots of eyes on this, including I just had a meeting with Department of Justice yesterday on this as well. The reality is that states can't legally create laws that violate federal law. So this bill, this legislation, which was passed into law, actually has no impact at the moment. But what it would do is, if the Transformation to Competitive and Integrated Employment Act passes through Congress, eliminating 14C, then Missouri has said, we have a law that in our state, we can continue to pay subminimum wages regardless of what the federal government says. Department of Justice, in being very honest with advocates about who have expressed concern about this legislation, because there's a couple other states that are eyeing this and looking to do something similar, has been very honest in saying that right now the makeup of the courts is such that not just related to disability employment policy, but just about anything, look at what's going on with abortion law, what's going on with a bunch of other things. The court system is not supporting the federal claims over state claims at the moment. And so that is a real concern in terms of the civil rights aspect of the elimination of 14C, is that, Missouri has kind of put a stake in the ground in looking for a workaround. So that's something to keep an eye on. And I saw some of the comments in the chat about 14C certificates, and I would generally say, so I saw Tyler's comment in particular, that is a trend that we are seeing. A number of 14C certificates, a huge number of them shut down completely during COVID, and they are not coming back online in large numbers. There are a couple of states where that's not the case, but Iowa, I think, is a really good measure of, or it's a good analogy to what's happening across the country at large, that most folks are not bothering to renew their 14C certificates. Gayla?
Yeah, we were kind of chatting in the chat about 14Cs. So that's really,
Yeah, I just made the comment that it's interesting because what we pulled from the Department of Labor still shows the resource centers having that. So that's good to know that they're inactive and probably won't be going forward. So thank you for letting me know that. I'll know how to approach that conversation differently.
If they're in pending status, and you have it in front of you, I don't. If they're in pending status, they are not required to list the number of people being served.
Yeah.
They stay in pending status until they revoke their certificate or renew it. So, from an advocacy perspective, those are entities that it's worth an outreach to kind of get a sense of where are their heads at? Are they planning to renew? Why or why not? That's kind of one step in the advocacy space that is in some cases, a little bit easier to have an impact there than active certificates that might be in a space of waiting until they have to do something different.
Yeah, and Julie, I had gone out to Woodward and Glenwood in the previous month, and both of them are saying that they're not going to renew. They have them, and they're looking at ways to create better services and ways to do customized integrated employment to get people integrated, right? So they want to start to push that employment side of things, and so they've been tell us more. How can we get involved? So I think they're open to ideas. So connecting with them would be a good way to start the conversation as to what's going on in other places or what other locations have used. So yeah, I think they're very open to talking about it.
And keep in mind, to connect the dots with the earlier conversation about Ability One, not every 14C certificate setting is on an Ability One contract, but many of them are. And so the Ability One contracts are going to be phasing out sub-minimum wage, regardless of what happens with the transformation to Competitive Integrated Employment Act. So that's another area for advocacy. If you have 14C certificate holders who are Ability One contractors, they're going to need to make this transition, and will need supports to do that. That's where we all come in.
right. Well, and let me put a plug in, Tyler, if you will share with us the team members that you've been connecting with and talking to at the resource centers. I think we would love to invite them to join us at ICIE as well as any of the other, elements of the work. We'd love to invite them to the table. But I know in the past, I think I've lost my contact. They've since moved on. So it would be great to have those if you wouldn't mind sharing. And maybe we can reach out to them and invite them to join us.
Yeah, I can connect you with them.
Perfect. Yeah, or an intro. I would so
Be
appreciate
wonderful.
that. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for sharing and weighing in on that.
The last piece that I will just quickly highlight is the latest jobs report data that I think it's the third month in a row of historic participation of people with disabilities in the workforce. So we are past returning to pre-pandemic levels of employment. People with disabilities participation in the labor market has continually grown, while simultaneously people without disabilities is dropping for a variety of reasons that would take like a couple of hours to talk through. But it's an interesting data point from a public policy perspective, because the reality is that businesses are desperate for workers, and people with disabilities are raising their hands saying, hey, we've been trying to get a job and you haven't been paying attention. And now employers are paying attention and they are hiring people and realizing that people with disabilities are a critical asset to the workplace. It really is a game changer in new ways in terms of how we talk about inclusion in the workplace. So we're slowly inching that gap, that labor participation rate gap. Still a long way to go. But it is worth noting that people with disabilities are working in competitive integrated employment at the highest levels we've ever recorded. I think that's it. I think those are my updates. What else do you want to know?
That's a lot.
Any questions, comments for Julie?
Had a quick question about the omnibus. You said home community-based services will be one of the things looked at and included into another bill, at least from the former Build Back Better plan that was, well, didn't have a good ending to it, we'll just say. So was there any other portions of the Build Back Better? Do we know what other sections are going to be at least try to be salvaged from the Build Back Better plan?
Right. And so just to clarify, the negotiations on the omnibus right now are looking at the inclusion of the HCBS piece. What we have heard from Capitol Hill is that there is bipartisan, bicameral support for the investment in HCBS. Whether or not it's included in omnibus, there is every expectation that funding is going to make it through Congress in some way, shape, or form over this budget cycle. So that is the good news. Where it lands it's easier to do it in an omnibus, but who the heck knows. The other pieces that are still very much in play are some of the Social Security pieces. Still some conversation around what is happening with 14C, because there was the elimination, there was not the elimination of 14C, there was the investment to support voluntary transition away from 14C was included in Build Back Better. So there are still conversations about trying to get that funding included in the omnibus. That wouldn't eliminate 14C under the Fair Labor Standards Act. It would just provide funding for states to help support phasing out at the state level. So those are the key things that we are keeping an eye on right now. The reality is there's not a ton that anyone on the Hill is willing to say that is more specific than what I just said, because it's just constant negotiations. So it's part of my fluster and feeling very like inarticulate and like I have nothing of use to tell you all is because it's really hard to get any information right now. That's definitive.
That is indeed understandable. I was just curious to know what parts were basically trying to be salvaged. Because it was definitely supposed to be potentially one of the largest infrastructure changes for this country in quite some time.
Yep.
Shame that it couldn't be saved.
We did just have a really good meeting with the minority leadership for the HELP committee, so Senator Burr's office from North Carolina. And they are really committed to working in a bipartisan manner on workforce in general, with a specific focus on improving opportunities for people with disabilities. And I think, you know, the two back-to-back hearings that have focused on this topic are very indicative of something that the committee as a whole feels that they can move forward in the current Congress. So that is good news. That being said, I guess the last piece I will say is that we also have kind of a limited time. There's a limited window on federal movement because we're about to head into midterm election season. So right now it's kind of a mad dash to negotiate what they can and try and push through what they can. And then unfortunately, it's going to be a whole lot of hurry up and wait until the next Congress is seated in January.
Yes, those midterm elections are coming up fast, but it is very good to hear that there is definitely some bipartisan movement, at least among, of course, the workforce status, at least. That's definitely good. We do need a lot more bipartisan support, that bipartisan movement, at least.
Y'all are on the map and part of the federal conversation because you have an amazing colleague in Iowa Workforce Development who is now on speed dial with the HELP committee staff. So that's fantastic.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, everybody, for the conversation and questions. I think let's move on to our IME and policy update with the wonderful Leanne Moskowitz. Hi, Leanne.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining today, and thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen if you don't mind.
Please, please.
All right. Hopefully y'all can see my screen.
Everything that Leanne shares with you is in the Google Drive folder that I shared with you. I'll drop that in one more time. Sorry.
All right. So I'll just kind of hit the highlights of the update because there's a lot, and I know we still have, I really want to get into the employment data with you all. So the CMS flexibilities, so all of the federally granted flexibilities continue throughout the duration of the federal public health emergency. The state public health emergency has ended, but that does not impact those flexibilities that were granted for the HCBS waiver programs or the state plan HCBS habilitation program through our disaster SPA with CMS. And so those flexibilities under the HCBS waivers are able to continue for up to 6 months following the end of the federal public health emergency. And the HCBS habilitation, state plan HCBS flexibilities end the date that the public health emergency ends. And so right now, that is scheduled to end on April 16th, unless the federal government decides to extend that out for an additional 90 days. They have told us all along that they will give states at least 60 days advance notice of the end of the public health emergency. For any of those flexibilities that have been granted through the public health emergency waiver application or disaster SPA, if we want to continue those flexibilities beyond the PHE, we will need to submit state plan amendments or waiver amendments to CMS to continue those flexibilities ongoing under our waivers. And that 6 months post PHE gives us a cushion to get those amendments into CMS for any of those flexibilities we decide to continue post PHE. So stay tuned on that. We will provide advance notice of those things ending. And so these are things that we've granted, such as expanding home delivered meals to waivers that didn't have coverage for those before, senior companion, homemaker services, the flexibilities around doing things via telehealth instead of in person, the electronic signature, the extension of provider certification when they're unable to participate in a recertification review because of COVID and the impacts of COVID, et cetera. So we have been looking at those. We've been talking about those for quite some time. We've been looking at the data related to claims and utilization of those expanded services during this period, and we'll be communicating with everyone on what will be continued and when those flexibilities will come to an end. I've given you the links for all of that information. So any of the guidance that you see out there today that pertains to Medicaid remains in effect today. The ending of the state public health emergency does not end the federal Medicaid flexibilities granted to the state. We've had a lot of confusion about this over the past 2 weeks. So I just want to make sure people understand that. Medicaid town halls and listening sessions, for those of you that have been participating, thank you very much. We want to hear from providers and from members accessing services, their caregivers, family members, people with lived experience. We want to know. The goal is to improve our Medicaid program. Our director has repeatedly said she wants our Medicaid program to be the best program in the 50 states. So, that's why we're doing this. We want your input. Your input helps us improve our regulations, our policies, and our procedures. So please, keep tuning in. We have also been having listening sessions in addition to the town halls. And so with the listening sessions, we've had those on durable medical equipment, provider enrollment credentialing, managed care request for proposal, the prior authorization process through Medicaid as well, and school-based services public listening session is scheduled for tonight or this afternoon from 3 to 4:30, and I've provided you the link to go on and register if you'd like to participate in that. But again, all of that stuff is located on our town hall webpage for those listening sessions as well. For member listening sessions, again, we're getting ready to issue the managed care RFP so that we'll have new managed care organizations coming online July 1st of 2023. So that should be hitting the streets any day now. We've also had listening sessions on long-term service and supports, maternal health care. We had transition age services on Tuesday night that was very well attended and received really good information about transitions in general, as well as what's important when you're looking at children transitioning into the adult service system. So again, here's natural supports is scheduled for the 22nd. And this is where we want to hear from the community on the use of natural supports, what's important, what are some barriers to natural supports, and provide some feedback into, how Medicaid could help improve our policies related to the utilization of natural supports. And by natural supports, that means basically unpaid caregivers, right? Or a co-worker at your job who helps you if you run into problems on the job instead of having that job coach there. Those are what we kind of refer to as natural supports. So American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, of course, this is bringing in millions and millions of dollars into the state to enhance, supplement, or improve our HCBS services. And so the department has submitted our second quarterly report to CMS on February 1st. So here's kind of a timeline of what we've done. We did receive we received preliminary approval on our plan, or partial approval on our plan in September, and then CMS notified us that our projects were all approvable on December 16th, which gave us the green light to start spending money. We submitted our second quarterly update to CMS on February 1st. All that information is located here on the ARPA webpage. So if you click on that and you go out to our webpage, maybe. My link doesn't want to work. Anyway, it should be active. It's showing that it's active. It just for some reason doesn't want to connect for me.
I think it's behind your
work,
window.
If that doesn't work, Jess, I'll send you the Word docs.
Perfect, perfect.
So stakeholder can submit questions or comments. There's a dedicated ARPA mailbox on all of our projects. So if you go out there and you read that quarterly report and you're like, I'm not sure what this means, or hey, is this included under this project, or could these project funds be used for this, or hey, I think this project should be able to be used for this, please give us that feedback. We want to hear that. Again, we're in unprecedented times of having this much money coming into the state to where we are going to be able to really make some significant changes in our HCBS services and programs. So just a little bit of update on the provider training platform. We've been working with the USED on the learning management system that is expected to go live July 1st. This will be a platform where providers can go out and have their direct care staff or their employees complete specific targeted competency-based trainings. And so that'll be available statewide to all providers. I would anticipate at some point in time, you'll see all of our kind of old archival type of training materials published out there. The training materials related to meeting the requirements within each of the services under the waivers. If we have training content related to meeting the requirements for DayHab or Prevoke or employment or what have you, those things will be loaded onto the LMS. As part of this, also, we're going to be looking at development and purchasing of training content and what's important for providers to have available to their employees out on that LMS. And so we'll be soliciting input again from the community on what types of trainings folks would like to see be part of that LMS and easily accessible for everyone. So we've been also doing planning sessions with the Service System Enhancement Task Force with the Advisory Council on Brain Injuries as part of the state plan for brain injury. One of the tasks or goals under there was to update the online training modules for brain injury that's required for providers for the brain injury waiver. We did that back in 2015, and so that material, is 6 years, almost 7 years old now, and so it's time to update that data. So we're probably going to be looking at a new BI online training modules, because the ones that are out there right now, the background programming is quite problematic, not SCORM compliant, that kind of thing. And so really would have a hard time talking to the LMS system or even being built into the LMS system without a lot of background programming. And so the Service System Enhancement Task Force is going to start looking at other training content. 2 years ago, we worked together to develop a screening tool or a scoring tool, if you would, of training content material, so that when we're asked to review that by external entities for the purposes of BA waiver or CNRS services, we would have a tool that we could rely on. This is what we need, and this is how this specific content material met that requirement. And so it's an objective way for us to choose an appropriate training material. So we'll be working on that. The Behavioral Health and Aging Disability Service System Evaluation Study. So the RFP was issued back in September. DHS did award the contract to Mathematica. Mathematica is also, as part of that project, subcontracting with the Harkin Institute. And so you'll be possibly hearing from folks on the ground. They're going to start doing their statewide evaluation of our disability service system. And that's not only looking at Medicaid, it's also looking at what the regions fund and what other state departments fund in terms of services and supports for people with disabilities. And our goal is to, have better equity, access, and alignment across our programs and try and identify and eliminate gaps in care across the system. So that report is due out, I believe, in December, and that will provide findings and recommendations to the department. And then our intent is to continue to contract with Mathematica on the implementation phases of those findings and recommendations, which will be the following year. So in 2023, we'll likely start implementing some of those findings and recommendations that come out of that report this December. Development grant for CNRS for pilots for kids. Planning sessions have been occurring. We held public listening sessions on December 8th, again, input into what this pilot should look like, what the criteria, what the service should look like. We are going to be issuing a request for information to gain more information into the development of the request for proposal for this grant project. The goal is to serve kids with neurobehavioral needs in a residential setting in the community for those kids who cannot be served in the family home or could not be served in a supported community living type of environment or need that more intensive level of service than what someone would typically receive under the supported community living service under the BI waiver. Development grant for therapeutic foster homes. So planning sessions have been in process for this, and it's going to be probably development of a training curriculum that can be replicated and scaled up across the state with foster family homes who are serving more complex needs kids. So these are kids that have, complex behavioral health needs, co-occurring diagnoses, and these are the kids that are significantly challenged and tough to serve, and tough to find folks willing to support them, right? And so this would be a pilot to develop those resources and services for those kids. One-time recruitment and retention grant. So that is in process right now. We notified everyone of the application period and informational letter 2309. The application period for the recruitment and retention grants closes Friday night at 4:30, close of business. Providers who have not applied by the deadline, there will not be a second opportunity to apply for funds. And the reason is because we are going to distribute all of the funds based on the number of FTEs that come in on the applications, number of FTEs for recruitment and the number of FTEs for retention, so current filled positions for those targeted HCBS services within the provider organizations. And I know, I've had a lot of questions about why weren't employment services covered under here. And quite frankly, the department had to prioritize which providers would be the recipients of the funds. And the decision was really based on the closures and the access issues that have been compounded for those personal care type of services, as well as those residential congregate setting type of services. So not that we don't recognize that supported employment providers are also having challenges, But with the limited amount of funds, the director felt like we really needed to prioritize for those targeted folks that are doing that direct service in the home or in a congregate setting. We saw a lot of closures to Rehab programs related to COVID. We see providers really struggling to deliver the supported community living services that they're authorized to provide. You know, the workforce shortage has really exacerbated what we saw on the ground before COVID. So we will target the week of February 28th for distribution of those funds. And that is contingent upon CMS approval of Iowa's supplemental grant. When a state proposes to spend more than $50 million during a quarter, they have to receive CMS's approval to do this. And of course, there's over $100 million in this fund that will be distributed during the end of February and March. Planning sessions are being scheduled for the Employee Training and Development Scholarship Grant Fund. And I wish I had this going quicker because I know APSI has their employment training series coming up, and a provider could certainly apply for funds to pay for their employees to go through this training through this grant. And so, you know, we just, you know, there's only so many of us to get stuff done. But we are going to start working on that application process, what it looks like, so that we can hopefully push that out sooner rather than later. Same thing with the Health Information Technology Grant and expand remote support. I think both of these are going to be innovative solutions to help address the workforce shortage crisis. It's not by any means intended to replace direct care staff, but to supplement direct care staff and to help providers utilize the direct service staff that they have to the maximum potential. And so we know that we have people out there who are receiving a staff person, having a staff person present 24/7 that perhaps isn't necessary. And perhaps they could be supported intermittently with some remote type of monitoring, smart technology, those kinds of things. If y'all remember a couple years back, USED had a pilot with job coaches to deliver job coaching virtually, right? And so I think if anything if COVID has taught us is that we can do things virtually, we can support people virtually, and we can meet the needs of people using technology. Not going to be right for everybody, right? We do have people, we know there are individuals out there that because of the nature of their disability or diagnosis that they do need the presence of a person. That's going to continue. But for those people who could be supported through technology, I think it's certainly a way to help people get their needs met while trying to maximize our limited direct care pool in the future. Let's see here. So assistance with application and care coordination and referral service. So this is a project that would provide assistance to folks who aren't yet Medicaid eligible to kind of help navigate the system, because we find that to be quite a barrier for folks, right? You don't get connected with a case manager until you're eligible for Medicaid. How do you get to the Medicaid door? For some people can be quite daunting. And so making that available, excuse me, in advance of, you know, their eligibility for case management, targeted case management, or care coordination through their MCO. So we'll be looking at that. And that ties back into what we're trying to do in the community integration workspace and helping people get better access to those community-based services. And then they expand the direct care registry. So we have a direct care registry. Nursing facilities are required to have their CNAs. They're, you know, loaded into the system. It tracks the CNA's license and credentials. The thought is that we could expand upon that. We've heard in a lot of different settings that individuals have a real hard time finding personal care workers or individual CDAC workers. People accessing the consumer choices option have a really hard time finding those employees to come and work for them. We know that sometimes individual consumer-directed attendant care workers and providers have a really hard time connecting with those people who are seeking those types of services. And so what we're envisioning is a type of, and maybe it's not our direct care registry, but something that will collect that information, kind of serve as a job board. These are folks that are looking for someone to provide personal care. These are the requirements. I'm somebody who provides personal care. These are my credentials, and help make that connection. So again, to help address the workforce shortage as well as access to services. We know people are really having a hard time finding caregivers. And that's not just in the agency providers, it's members, you know, choosing to self-direct or use the consumer-directed service. So that's kind of ARPA update. Oh, let me take a drink. Are there any questions before I move on? All right. So HHS alignment, that is underway. Yet to be determined what it's all going to look like. There are a couple of bureau chief positions that they're trying to fill, and then they will be sending out a proposed hierarchy, or what am I, table of contents is what I'm trying to, or not table of contents, table of organization. That's what I'm trying to say. So that'll be coming out. All the information is listed there. We did seek feedback from the public on the preliminary report for alignment of IDP, Iowa Department of Public Health and Department of Human Services to become Health and Human Services. The public feedback is located on that link right there. So if you click on that, that'll take you to the report of the public feedback. Legislative reports are located here. Of course, IOME, DHS required to submit a lot of reports to the legislature annually, and you can find them all here. Legislative watch, so I'm not gonna dive into any of the bills. Brooke always does such an awesome job to talk about what's going on the ground that are impacting people. But funnel week, we already talked about funnel week. It's been a flurry of activity this week. We too are concerned about some of those same bills that Brooke talked about. I think the ones that are really going to have a significant impact in Medicaid is the inpatient psychiatric services, as well as the oversight of the eligibility Medicaid, you know, systems and fraud prevention, those types of bills that are out there circulating right now. Policy changes. So the HAB SPA is still under CMS review. Y'all recall, we first submitted that into CMS on August 26th. We've been having a lot of back and forth, and what has complicated this issue is that there is part of the American Rescue Plan Act maintenance of effort requirements for the enhanced match from the federal government on our HCBS services to not, you have to not put any more restrictive requirements in place than what was in place as of April 1st. And so if you recall with HAB, we're changing the eligibility criteria to open it up to more people. We are adding, getting rid of the inter-ray and replacing it with a locus or cow locus to derive an acuity score for which to approve HAB, and then go on if someone needs home-based HAB to utilize their cow locus or locus actual disposition score to authorize home-based HAB services. CMS has been really kind of struggling with those changes and viewing them as perhaps more restrictive. And so we've been providing a lot of content, a lot of information, a lot of back and forth with them, trying to demonstrate that no, this is not more restrictive. We're actually clarifying and expanding on who could access, you know, habilitation by further expanding on that risk-based and needs-based criteria that we already have today. So we've been waiting since November 19th for feedback from them from our last call. So I want to get training scheduled. We're really hoping we can just go forward with the locus and cow locus starting on April 1st. But again, I don't want to schedule training in case they require us to make some pretty significant changes to our SPA in order to approve. But we'll see. stay tuned. Let's see here. The provider access. So in October, providers have been able to go in to the Iowa Medicaid Provider Access Portal and access HCBS waiver and habilitation eligibility for members. There is a little bit of lag in information on behalf of the MCOs. So if you go in and you're looking up a fee-for-service member, to find that member, you have to be authorized as a provider to deliver a service to that member in that member's service plan. That's the one-to-one match that happens on the back end to enable you to look at their eligibility. So if you're approved in a member service plan, in a service span for a specific service, you'll be able to look up their HAB and waiver eligibility in IMPA. For managed care enrollees, you can also go in, look, we receive service plan authorization information from the MCOs that gets loaded in the back end into the Iowa Medicaid Provider Access Portal. And if you're authorized by an MCO and a member service plan to deliver an HCBS or waiver or HAB service, it'll make that match and you'll be able to view that member's waiver or habilitation eligibility. The issue with the managed care data is that there's a lag. There's about a 1 to 2 month lag in the data. So if you're thinking somebody should be eligible for services February 1st, and you go in and you look it up and it's not showing waiver or HAB eligibility and it's a managed care member, reach out to the managed care organization. We know about this is a known issue on the lag time causing confusion around whether and that is so for the 5-year rule review, we are looking at all of the administrative rules across Medicaid. So all those Medicaid chapters, we are soliciting feedback. So if you know of areas, and what the 5-year rule review is technical things, right? CMS changed a federal reg that we reference. We've changed the name of something, a process has changed, and maybe a circular rule reference has changed. We are dropping enterprise from the name of Iowa Medicaid. We are, from beginning in January, we are now only referring to ourselves as Iowa Medicaid in any of our written communications. Our websites, of course, haven't been updated. All those links that say IME are still active, but if you get written documentation from us, it's likely going to say Iowa Medicaid and not Iowa Medicaid Enterprise. We're going to be dropping the enterprise in all of our administrative rules. We're also going to do a cleanup. We still reference consumer in a number of places in our rules. We're going to be updating that to member. That's our preferred term for our Medicaid beneficiaries. And so doing some cleanup like that. So if you have ideas or you have thoughts or you're like, man, this isn't the right rule reference, or if you're aware of something like that, please let us know. Anything that is a substantive change, we're changing policy, we're putting in new limitations or new requirements or lifting limitations or requirements, that will be a separately identified rule package distinct from our technical cleanup package. Just so you know, that's all in process right now. HCBS cost report rules, been doing a lot of back and forth with the AG's office on those. So those are still in process. Hopefully we'll be wrapping that up when we meet with them again on Friday, and we can get that off to fiscal for their sign off and then out to get published to the administrative rules bulletin. The health and disability waiver renewal applications are due to CMS by May 1st. We are looking at some different things within that waiver and talking amongst ourselves on how we want to address some of the things that have come up during the member town halls as far as family caregivers, age limits of workers, definition of usual caregiver. We're also looking at our documentation requirements to see if there's any space where we have the ability to lift some burden on our providers and recognizing they're really challenged and recognizing the level of knowledge, skills, and abilities of our direct care workforce. So also, let's see here, what else? We did do a policy clarification to address the consumer choice option concerns that have come up during the town halls, and we have a separate work group, consumer choices option improvement work group that has been meeting with members who are accessing the consumer choices option, the independent support brokers and others to identify areas of barriers to accessing services and barriers to being able to self-direct, and how we can make some improvements there. The health home rules are in process. They will be published in the administrative rules bulletin on February 23rd. And of course, this is just adopting all of the changes that have been authorized by CMS in the state plan amendment. The elderly waiver and children's mental health waiver evidence was due to CMS, and it was submitted to them on December 31st. CMS will be reviewing that. They'll be sending us their preliminary report. And this is kind of the back and forth that we go through with them before we have to submit our renewal applications. Same process that we've been going through on the HD and PD waivers. You have to renew your waiver every 5 years. A year and a half before that, CMS asks you to submit evidence and then make changes to your waivers as appropriate. We do have new policy staff. I can't remember if I updated you all on this last time. Jason Watson has taken over AIDS, HIV, the PD, and the HD waivers. He's also taking over transportation policy from me, which includes ground emergency medical transportation and NEMT. But I'm still kind of hanging out and being the lead on that policy. Jason has a lot of great skills, and he's going to move into our MCO liaison position. So I think that'll be good for everybody. Tracy Else, he comes to us. So Jason came to us from Amera Group, and prior to that, he worked on the provider side of things. And he was in with case management and doing things like that with Amera Group. Tracy Else, he comes to us from income maintenance. He is a long time income maintenance supervisor. He has taken over the elderly waiver from me. Well, we're still kind of, in tandem. I'm still supporting him. Case management, he's taken that over from Brian Lyons. And the employee visit verification and money follows the person. And so, both of these guys are still in the learning process. So Brian and I are still supporting them in their, policy clarifications, technical assistance, training, that kind of thing that'll be expected. But we're super happy to have new folks. And we do have a couple of positions posted out there on DAS right now. We're looking for a couple more LTSS policy specialists. Of course, with Jason, moving into that MCO liaison role, we are looking for someone to pick up those programs that he was picking up from Brian and I. So we're playing 52 card pickup at Medicaid right now, I think. So if you know anybody that would be great and who's a policy wonk, point him to DAS and those open jobs. Stakeholder work groups. So we've been having several workforce shortage work group. We've been meeting once a month. We've been addressing issues that the provider community is facing related around workforce shortage. It's attended by providers, our MCOs, other state agencies that also have an interest in this. And so our goal is to try and identify some innovative solutions in how we can address the direct care workforce shortage. We've been looking at technology-enabled services and service models in other states. I'm sorry, does somebody have a question? Okay, so we've been looking at technology-enabled services in other states, and I already talked a little bit about that. We've been also looking at career pathways for direct care workforce staff. I know we've had presentations at ICIE before about the registered apprenticeship programs. Jeanette Archer-Simmons presented during our last workforce work group on her registered apprenticeship program that she has started within her agency. Great information. And they just came out, I think Doug Keese probably provided this to folks on this call. They just came out with another release of grant funds for registered apprenticeship programs. And so again, I encourage folks to check that out. We've had 2 employees within DHS participate on the National Direct Service Worker Learning Collaborative. That's Connie Fenslow with MHDS and Brian Wines on my policy team. They are, Iowa is one of 22 states participating. And the work products that'll come out of this is kind of an executive summary as well as a report. And the report will go into, you know, a global approach to solutions, the 5 main solutions that they've identified. I was really happy to see that it's those things that we've been talking about on how to address the direct care workforce shortage. So raising wages, enhancing training and career advancement, raising the profile of direct care service worker jobs. So, you know, building that pathway for a career, perhaps looking at different levels of direct care worker in terms of reimbursement, skills, knowledge, abilities, credentials, supporting workforce innovations. And that comes back to, you know, how do we use technology in supporting people, and strengthening connection between self-directing consumers and workers. And that goes back to what we hope to accomplish either through expanding the direct care registry or adopting some other type of connection. A lot of other states are using the Connect to Care app for their workers and their individuals that are self-directing and looking for workers. So it's been very successful in other states, and I think we'll be looking at that as well. The CCO work group is focused on process and process improvement, as I said, and they're also looking at the utilization factor under CCO. If any of you have used the consumer choices option, you know, here's your budget, and then right out of that budget comes your ISB fees and your financial management service fees. And the utilization factor, it's not, what it does is it makes the rate be the average of the statewide utilization of a service on the traditional waiver side, applies the utilization factor. So if 60% of your waiver population uses this service, then the rate is 60% of what that fee scheduled rate is, which is really causes issues when trying to pay a living wage to your direct care workers under the CCO program. And so Brian's been working with participants in trying to solution that utilization factor and how those rates of reimbursement are, or the rates tied to the service are identified under the Consumer Choices Option Program. So that'll be an ongoing project as well. IHH process improvement work group started on January 31st. Again, removing barriers to care and review and recommending an alternative reimbursement methodology for health homes. So I'm sure that's not it. There's other process improvement work groups going on related to prior authorization, durable medical equipment, coming out of those listening sessions and town halls that we've been having. So if people don't think that their input matters, it does, because we're doing a lot of work based on things that have been identified during those town halls. So again, I strongly encourage people to have their voices heard. It's a direct audience with our Medicaid director, and she wants to hear from people accessing services and their families. Here's our communication, informational letters. I won't go through those because I want to dive into the employment data. So let me stop sharing while I go fishing for my employment data real quick.
Hey, Leanne.
Are there any questions while I find the employment data document? Do I have
Well,
time to go through the
I was gonna
employment
say,
data?
Interesting enough, I don't think you do.
Okay,
We have
that's
six.
okay. You guys, so you guys should have them. I sent those attachments.
Right.
The two things that I noticed, no one's getting career exploration except 2 people under the ID waiver, or at least they weren't in October reporting period. And there was no payment for individual placement and supported employment for October either, which really concerns me. But it may be that they're strictly serving IVRS people during the month of October. We have heard some challenges around referrals, et cetera. I know Denise and Jewel anyway has been working really hard with the case managers in order to try and ensure that they're looking at that employment first. You know, I believe Dee has also our 2 employment specialists with our MCOs. So again, concerning, but we're also in COVID times, right? So I think we have to keep that in mind when we're looking at that data. I think as we come out of COVID, I think the January data collection period will probably look a little bit different. If you recall, we expanded the employment data collection, so now we're collecting it 3 times a year. And we felt we might have better data. So we've been collecting it April and October, and we have added January into the collection methodology. So stay tuned on that. Again, I provided you 2 documents. One is the aggregate combined, looking at period to period, and the other was the program comparisons strictly for the month of October. So you can see the differences across the different waiver programs.
Perfect.
Let me know if you have questions.
Thank you so much, Leanne. And maybe we can put a pin in this and revisit this. But absolutely, they're here in the Google Drive, the documents Leanne was referring to. So check those out. I'm gonna ask Nicole to share with us the APSI updates real quick before she needs to leave. And then I have a couple of other quick updates or information for you before you go, including change in meeting times. So stay on if you can. Hey, Nicole, take it away.
Thanks, Jess. Just quick updates from Iowa APSI. We have our public meeting coming up on March 15th that everyone is encouraged to join. Our employment training series for the month of April is up. It is going to be our first face-to-face since COVID. So I'm going to post the link right here. Actually, I think I just sent that directly to you, Jess. Sorry. Let me get to everybody.
No worries.
All right, registration link is here for dates. And we want to encourage everybody to participate in the Upgrade Medicaid. They have virtual events that will provide information and opportunity for discussion around the recent Department of Justice investigation. So I'm going to put the link in here for that as well.
Yes, just pulling that up as Nicole references it. There's those dates. She'll share the link with you, and it'll also be in the notes.
And then we also have our benefits training. So jump online and you can use that same link for our training opportunities. We have a Mason City and Davenport face-to-face benefits training hosted by Misty Johnson coming on February 24th and March 10th. For all other updates, follow us on Facebook to see those.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole.
Yes, thank you.
Perfection. I also want to share with y'all IVRS. This is also in the Google folder, the announcement, but IVRS is going to be hosting a spring 3-part menu of services training that they're inviting other provider partners to. Check out the dates here. They're in April. But again, this announcement is in the folder, but just wanted to bring it to your attention and let you know that that's coming up in April. I'm going to stop sharing that. And I want to share with you, so we had some date changes for our upcoming meetings. So make sure that you have May 26th on your calendar. And please set aside our old meeting time, that 10 to 3, because we hope to meet in person. We're still working on securing location and also paying attention to what's going on with the pandemic and cases and stuff like that. So we're still going to be paying attention to that and trying to be responsive to that. But we sure would love to meet in person. So May 26th, 10 to 3, August 25th, 10 to 3, again, hopefully in person. November 17th, we will return to virtual. So just make sure you have those dates. We'll share them again, right, in the notes and in emails. But if you can plug them into your calendar, that'd be great. Let me see, anything else in the chat? Don't forget that Iowa APSI is also on LinkedIn, so feel free to join us and check us out there. And on Instagram, right? Any other updates, announcements, information to share? Did I forget anything? All right. I think we're all right. So transition. Oh, thank you, Mari. So Mari shared that, let's see, the Transition Iowa website has been updated based on feedback from families, educators, and service providers. The site now includes transition planning roadmap, activities that can be used for skill development, and over 300 transition-related resources. So cool. Please share with anyone you might know, and she dropped the link in there. Yes, we shared this in an email or an announcement, but IVRS, or I'm sorry, IVRS is looking for SRC members. We will share that announcement with you again, but please consider that. It's a great way to be involved and to shape rehabilitation services across the state, right? So be sure to. Oh, yes, Kim is asking if folks can still connect virtually. Yes, we want to be able to provide that virtual option as well. So that's kind of a part of our on-site planning. So yes, we definitely want to make that available for folks to still connect virtually if we're meeting in person. So thanks for asking that. Definitely try to make that happen. So if there isn't anything else, we will see you again in May, and May 26th to be exact. And we'll be sure to share out the notes and the recording and all the materials and links. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. It was good to see you. Please take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Be well. Have a good rest of the week.